Alright, here's some of the things you're going to need. You're going to need the flight controller kit. You're going to need some type of receiver. This is a FrSky PPM receiver. Blades. You're going to need a frame, motors, mounts, and obviously you'll need lipos. Alright, so we're going to prepare these like this and then put a drop of hot glue on there, and I'm going to do that for all four and we'll be back. Okay, now I hope you can see this, but I put a little drop of hot glue on the bottom of each motor in the motor mount, and they're pretty snug in there. So we'll put them on the frame. Okay, now I have all the motors mounted and they're secured on there. So let's talk about the flight controller. You can either solder your motors directly to it, or you can use the supplied little 2-pin Molex connectors here, like you see on this one. These motors already had these connectors on here, so it was an easy plug and play kind of thing. For this one, we are not going to use the plugs though. It's not a big deal. You want to make the decision first though, because if you solder your motors directly to it, it's going to be hard to get the JST connectors on there. So decide if you're going to use connectors or not. I don't use connectors. Some people do. Okay, so included in the flight controller kit is this Walkera connector. This is sometimes called the flight controller, 4 little JST connectors, and this little 4-pin. You can either solder these in. I usually don't. So for this demonstration, we're not going to do it. But you get the idea. If you want to program pretty often and don't want to have to hold the connector while you're programming, like this, then you should solder it in there. But I usually just hold that in there while I'm doing it, and that seems to be good enough, so we're not going to do that. And you're also going to have to decide how long you want your power cable. For this frame, we're going to be mounting it with double-sided tape in the center, and we want a pretty short length, about that much, just so it sticks out the back long enough that we can grab it. You don't want it in there because it's a pain to have to grab onto it when you're trying to attach a battery. So yeah, measure out how much you want. About that is what we're going to do. And next we'll solder that up. Alright, we're going to solder the connector. This is how long I've decided I want it to be. You're going to make sure that you have your polarity right. Alright, I usually like to put the wires in from the top, because if you put them in from the bottom, then you may have problems mounting it on a flat surface. So, and you may also notice that these holes are very large. That's so it can accommodate large connectors. So you're going to have to make sure that you fill these up with solder. That's one. And you want to make sure that the solder goes all the way through. There's a good connection. Bottom looks good, but I'm just gonna... There we go. Alright. So there is our power lead, ready to go. Next we'll be doing the receiver. Okay, so now that I've got this soldered up to the RX, we're going to have to decide if we want to mount this on top of the flight controller, or if you want to mount it remotely on the frame. You can do that too, somewhere else on the frame, anywhere else. But I usually take a little piece of double-sided tape and put it on top of the STM on here, and solder those directly to there. It's just the least amount of wire. It's nice and clean setup. So we're going to cut this first so that we can solder it, and then we'll flip it over and stick it. Okay, this is where you're going to solder your receiver to. This is the PPM pin, and that's the Spektrum pin. So if you have the Spektrum receiver, you would solder your signal wire to that pin. But because we have PPM, we're going to do the PPM pin. And like I said before, make sure you tin these pins, because else they'll get all frayed out and make it 10 times harder to solder. And then you'd be like, why is my soldering suck? But you really should just tin them. Okay, so now we've soldered the receiver, and it's just hanging there. I'm going to get a little piece of 3M mounting tape. This stuff is awesome. I'm going to put it on top of the chip and then stick it down. Okay, we've got a little piece of double-sided tape here. We're just going to stick this down, making sure to leave room so we can solder the motor pins on. So we want it just about there. Okay, now this next step can be done one of two ways. You can either put your tape down and stick your flight controller to your frame first, then solder, or solder, then stick it. I find it's easier to stick it first, and since we're soldering directly at the top, it'll be very easy. If you're using the pins, you'll already have them in, and you can just plug your motors in once you stick it to the frame. So let me get some tape on here and we'll stick it on. Okay, I want to make a note of this. If your frame doesn't have area for these pins for you to be able to access them, you should solder them on before. But since this frame has area for the pins on the bottom side, when I stick it, you see, I can access them. So you should solder those if you don't have access to it. Basically is what I'm saying. Okay. And also, you want to make sure you have your motor rotations right. So, counterclockwise, clockwise. That's all written down in manuals. Let's stick it on there. Just about center. And as I said before, this 3M double-sided tape will make a stronger bond over time. Okay. Okay, if you want a cleaner build, you could probably cut these off and make them just a little bit shorter. But I'm just going to run them underneath the frame right now, and then we'll solder them. Okay. Okay, I'm going to attempt to do this on camera. I am going to bridge the bind pins on the transmitter or the receiver I mean, and plug the power in after setting my radio into bind mode. Okay. Going to connect the bind pins and plug it in. Okay, so now we plugged it into the computer. We set our motor PWM rate, and we set PPM, and we also set our minimum throttle to 1000. So when we plug this in now, it shouldn't spin. Okay, it's blinking, telling us it's initializing. It stopped. Okay, when the green light is on, that means you're armed. So we're gonna go ahead and arm it, and give a little throttle up to test. You can hear the motor spinning right there. Alright. Just remember that the rotations are like this, and like this. I always remember it as the front ones are going in towards the center, and the back ones are going in towards the center. It's the easiest way for me to remember it. So let's power this thing up. Wait for the green light. Green light's off. Ready to be armed. Okay. Turn my transmitter on. I should have done that before. Alright, it's armed. Alright, here's a basic little test of it spinning. Just make sure you can yaw left, yaw right, go forward, go backward, side, side. You just want to do that on the bench so that you know that you have your orientations right. Just give it a light tap on your transmitter and it'll go forward, backward, yaw. And you won't have to, like, you know, have it flip over and figure out that you're doing something wrong. Alright, maiden flight. Here we go. Armed up. There you have it. And that's stock PIDs, stock everything, except for motor PWM and minimum throttle set to 1000. So it's pretty rock steady just on the stock PIDs.